You are walking through a forest, alone, finally, after days of navigating human noise. And within minutes, something shifts, your breathing slows, your nervous system begins to release tension you did not know you were holding. But it is more than relaxation. You feel the forest itself, the grief of old trees remembering what was lost, the quiet watchfulness of animals you cannot see but somehow sense, the heaviness in certain clearings where something happened long ago. You are not imagining this. You are experiencing what the Druids knew, what the Hermit seeks when withdrawing from the village, what indigenous traditions have always understood, that consciousness does not stop at human skin, that the INFJ capacity to absorb and feel extends beyond people, into the living world itself. Welcome to power and myth. If you have ever felt an animal's emotional state before they showed it, if you have walked into certain rooms or onto certain land and felt what happened there, if forests or oceans or mountains seem to speak to you in ways you cannot quite explain, you are not losing your grip on reality. You are experiencing something that wisdom traditions across cultures have always known, and that modern psychology is only beginning to name. The INFJ does not just absorb what other people feel. For some, the empathic field extends into what biologists call the more than human world. Animals, plants, places, land that carries memory, ecosystems that respond to presence. This is not metaphor, this is not New Age mysticism, this is the Hermit's inheritance, the pattern the Druids embodied, the capacity that emerges when someone has learned to quiet human noise long enough to perceive what else is speaking. A hermit withdraws not because they hate people, but because they cannot find what they need amongst them. The lantern they carry into darkness is not just for their own illumination, it is for what they will bring back, and what the hermit discovers in solitude is this. The world is alive in ways the village has forgotten. Trees hold knowing. Animals carry their own consciousness. Land is memory made physical. Everything is responsive, communicative, carrying information that most people have been trained not to perceive. The hermit feels this because their nervous system has not been fully socialized out of it. The INFJ who retreats to nature is not running away. They are going towards something the collective has lost, and when they return, they carry knowledge that seems strange to those who have never left the village square. The Druids understood this structurally. They were intermediaries between human culture and the living world. They did not just study nature, they conversed with it. Trees were elders, groves were sacred because the Druids could feel what lived there. Animals were teachers, the land itself held memory, and the Druids' role was to read it, interpret it, carry it forward. This was not primitive superstition, it was sophisticated, ecological and psychological knowing dressed in the language available at the time. The Druids perceived what we now call ecosystems, biofields and collective memory held in place, and they knew that some people are born with a capacity to feel this more acutely than others. The INFJ who feels what animals and places carry is participating in this ancient lineage, whether they have language for it or not. But let us be precise about what is actually happening here, because precision protects this experience from being dismissed as fantasy. When you walk into a forest and feel the grief of old trees, you are not hearing them speak in words. You are perceiving information through your nervous system that other people either do not register or have learned to ignore. Your body is responding to subtle environmental cues, the quality of light through leaves, the particular silence that follows loss, the way specific microclimates feel when an ecosystem is struggling. This is embodied cognition operating beyond the human social realm. Your mirror neurons, which typically fire in response to human emotion, are also responding to the aliveness around you. Research on highly sensitive people shows that some nervous systems process environmental stimuli with greater depth. You are not reading minds, you are reading presence, and presence extends far beyond human consciousness. Jung called this the psychoid realm, the place where psyche and matter meet, where the boundary between inner and outer becomes porous. He understood that consciousness is not confined to human skulls, that there is something like awareness distributed throughout the living world, and certain people perceive this more readily. He was drawing on older traditions when he wrote this. Animism, the understanding that everything participates in consciousness to varying degrees, not that rocks think like humans, but that there is responsiveness, memory, and presence in all things. The INFJ who feels what animals and places carry is perceiving what Jung called the psychoid, the realm where your inner state and the outer world are not separate but interpenetrating. This is not mysticism, it is the leading edge of how we understand consciousness itself. Biophilia is the term E.O. Wilson used to describe the human need for connection with other living systems. But for some people, this is not just need, it is perception. The INFJ does not simply feel better in nature, they feel what nature is feeling. They register the distress of an injured animal before seeing the injury. They walk onto land where violence occurred and feel the residue without knowing the history. They sit with a tree and sense its age, its endurance, the way it has weathered what came before. This is not projection, it is reception. The same nervous system that absorbs human emotion is also absorbing information from the broader living world, and this makes sense. Humans are animals. We evolved in constant communication with ecosystems. The INFJ has simply retained, or never entirely lost, the capacity that most people have been socialized to ignore. The Greeks understood this through the language of nymphs and dryads, consciousness that lived in rivers, in trees, in mountains. These were not primitive superstitions. They were ways of naming the felt sense that places have presence, that a river carries something beyond water, that an ancient tree holds something beyond wood. Modern people dismiss this as fantasy because we have been trained to see the world as dead matter. But indigenous traditions across the globe have always known what the Greeks, the Druids, and Jung were pointing toward. The world is alive, responsive, communicative. And some people can feel this. The INFJ who perceives what animals and places carry is not special in the sense of being better. They are structurally attuned to something the broader culture has forgotten how to perceive. Celtic animism held that everything has spirit, not metaphorically, actually. The land you walk on has memory. The animals you encounter have their own interiority. The forest is not a collection of objects but a community of presences. This was not belief, it was perception, and it was passed down through the lineages of those who could feel it. The INFJ experiences this because their Naife function stack creates a kind of openness to subtle information. Introverted intuition perceives underlying patterns. Extroverted feeling tunes into emotional climates. When these functions operate beyond the human realm, you get someone who can walk into a forest and feel what the forest is carrying. Someone who sits with an animal and knows, without being told, what that animal needs. This is not magic, it is perception operating at a bandwidth most people do not access. But here is where it becomes difficult. Here is the shadow that sits beneath this gift. Because this capacity can become a way of avoiding the more complex work of being present with humans, an INFJ who struggles with human relationships may romanticize their connection to nature as evidence that they are somehow more evolved, more sensitive, and more attuned to what matters. They can use their bond with animals and places as evidence that humans are the problem, that the world would be better without people, that their isolation is noble rather than protective. This is spiritual bypassing. This is the shadow of the hermit who withdraws not to find what others need, but to escape what they themselves cannot face. And it is seductive, because nature does not demand what humans demand. Trees do not ask you to be vulnerable. Animals do not expect you to show up consistently. The forest does not judge you for your contradictions. It is easier to feel what a wounded bird needs than to sit with your own woundedness in the presence of another person. The shadow of this capacity is the belief that your connection to the more than human world makes you special. That sets you apart in ways that justify your separateness, that it excuses you from the ordinary struggles of human intimacy, human accountability, human mess. But the integrated INFJ knows something else. They know that their sensitivity to animals and places is not a substitute for human connection. It is an expansion that follows their work learning boundaries, integration, and presence with their own species. The elder INFJ, who has walked through shadow work and emerged more whole, does not use nature as an escape. They use it to deepen. Their capacity to feel what animals and places carry has been refined by their willingness to sit with what humans carry, including themselves. This is the difference between spiritual bypassing and genuine expansion. One runs from difficulty. The other moves through it and discovers that the gifts on the other side are larger than imagined. Jung recognized that individuation requires integrating the shadow before one can access deeper capacities. You cannot bypass the hard human work and attain mystical communion with nature. Or rather, you can, but it will be immature, romantic, and self-serving. The INFJ, who has integrated their shadow, who has learned to hold space for human complexity without absorbing it, who has done the unglamorous work of boundaries and self-honesty, discovers that their sensitivity expands. It does not stop at human consciousness. It begins to register what animals feel, what places remember, what the land itself is carrying. This is not a replacement for human connection. It is what becomes possible when you are no longer using nature to avoid yourself. So what does it mean to carry this capacity with integrity? It means first that you do not use it as proof of superiority. The INFJ who feels what animals and places carry is not more evolved than someone who does not. They are differently attuned, and that attunement comes with its own difficulties. Feeling the distress of an injured animal is not pleasant. Walking onto land that holds trauma is not a gift you asked for. Sensing the grief of old-growth forests being cut down is not enlightenment. It is weight. And the INFJ who speaks about this as though it makes them special has not yet integrated the shadow. They still use their sensitivity as an identity, rather than allowing it to be simply what it is, a particular way of perceiving that carries both insight and burden. It means, second, that you recognize this capacity develops. Not everyone experiences it, and amongst those who do, it deepens or fades depending on how much shadow work you have done. The young INFJ who is lost in human relationships may retreat to nature, feeling vaguely soothed but not yet perceiving the specific presences there. The INFJ who has spent years learning boundaries, integrating their wounds, and sitting with their own darkness, often reports that their sensitivity expands. They begin to feel what they could not feel before, the animal's fear, the tree's endurance, the land's memory. This is not because they are more spiritual, it is because they are more integrated. Shadow work does not diminish sensitivity, it refines it. It removes the static of your own unprocessed material so that you can perceive what is actually there rather than what you are projecting. And it means, third, that you hold this capacity lightly. You do not build an identity around it. You do not use it to justify withdrawing from the human world. You allow it to be one dimension of how you perceive, not the center of who you are. The integrated INFJ moves fluidly between human connection and communion with the more than human world. They do not need to choose. They recognize that their sensitivity to animals and places is an extension of the same capacity that allows them to sit with human suffering without taking it on. It is all part of the same gift, the capacity to perceive what is present, to be with what is alive, to register the subtle information that most people miss because they are too defended, too distracted, too socialized into ignoring it. The Druids did not withdraw from their tribes. They served by moving between human culture and the living world. The hermit does not stay in the cave forever. They return with a lantern, with what they found in darkness, with a knowing that can only be discovered in solitude. This is the path of integration. You do not abandon the human realm for the forest, you learn to inhabit both. You become the one who can translate, who can bring back what the trees know, what the animals sense, what the land remembers. And you do this not because you are special, but because you have done the work of becoming whole enough to hold it. This video has named something you've experienced but never heard spoken aloud. I want to know, do you feel what animals carry? Do certain places speak to you in ways that others find strange? Tell me in the comments. And if you are part of the Power and Myth community, you already know your strangeness is not pathology, it is perception. Subscribe if you want to continue exploring this territory together. You are part of something here. Until next time, find your power, know your myth.